All right. Um, Tim, you guys know Tim, but I will introduce myself. The meeting this morning is regarding sustainability and energy management for you all, and specifically at Navine Health, what we can all do. My name is Dasha Tretiu. I am my official title at Navine Health is I am a director of strategic sourcing. I work in our supply chain department. My other responsibility, which I am very happy to have and I'm very proud of, is that I help lead our sustainability department and our sustainability committee at Navine Health. I have had experience. I have gone to school for sustainability management training, and I'm very excited to help organize and lead some of the efforts at Navine Health around sustainability and energy reduction, and to help Navine Health achieve the goals that we have set for ourselves as an organization to be more sustainable by 2050. So I will pause there. And Tim, I don't know if you just want to say hi, just so people know you're here, or if you have already. Hi. All right, cool. All right, I'll let you then go forward. And if you're talking,
You,
we cannot hear you.
yeah, you're on mute, Tim.
I didn't mean to mute myself. Anyhow, this is basically our cause, standard document in every Novant system. Uh, Next one, basic housekeeping. If y'all don't know where the restroom is in your facility that you're at, I can't tell you where it is, so you need to hunt that up yourself. So sustainability in healthcare. Hospitals are, as you all know, most energy intensive. We've got certain code requirements that require excessive amounts of air changes that aren't required in other facilities. We have inspection and testing that goes on, and we're open 24 hours a day, which there's most facilities are not 24/7, can shut down their uh, systems at night or at least set them back. We can't. So, uh,
So I'll dive into climate change and give you guys a little bit of the why behind why is this important? Why are we doing this? And why Navine Health leaders have put resources behind us looking into sustainability, from energy to utilization, and why are we here, right? Why are we having this call today? And why is this part of your education? So climate change has become controversial, but really what climate change is looking into is natural pattern changes in climate, right? And climate versus weather, I guess, is we should probably make a little bit of a distinction there. Weather is a short-term occurrence, right? It's something that is happening today outside. It's an event that happens for a very short period of time, whether it's sunny, whether it's rainy, whether it's cold or warm, whatever it may be. Um, Climate is something that's long term. It has been there, it's happening, right? It's usually probably about a 30-year period of time. And it's something that you expect for a certain region of a country, of a world, of, wherever it may be. But you kind of expect a certain climate for that area. For example, in North Carolina, you're expecting it to be in Charlotte hot, muggy in the summer and maybe milder winters. And what happens with climate change and why we are concerned about it is because unnaturally it's becoming hotter and muggier, right? And it seems to be that what we were expecting for a muggy summer, it's becoming worse, right? Every single year. What we're expecting there in the winter to be some snow, we're not seeing that snow for longer periods of time. And or sometimes it's extremely snowy, right? It's these extreme events, extreme patterns that are more frequent. They're also causing a lot more damage that is unprecedented, and there are also human lives lost with these patterns. And they're not natural, they're not normal. Something is exacerbating them every single year or every single 5 years. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about climate change, that things are just becoming worse, right? They're markedly, noticeably worse, and they are creating more damage. They're creating more lives lost, and more cost to our economy. And so we can see that the next couple of slides, you guys will be able to see that like in the 90s, nationally, there were about 55 climate related disasters um, during this decade. So about 5.5 per year. The cost of that was about $30.8 billion per year, or $300.7 billion of costs associated with these disasters, and about 306 deaths related to these disasters per year, or 3,000 deaths over the decade. In the 2000s, that went up, right? So it doubled. Um, a little bit, so we have 310 deaths per year, 3,100, a lot more cost and a lot more events per year or over that decade as well. And then it doubles again. So it seems like every single decade we're seeing a doubling of these events, of these costs, and a significant impact on the amount of deaths we're also seeing due to these related climate disasters. Um, Most recently, 2019 to 2021, you can see again these events continue to increase in frequency. We are seeing more damage and continued lives lost due to these climate-related disasters. They're more frequent, they're stronger, they're costing us more from both lives and expense. So why? Why are these things happening? And a lot of times, people will say, well, that's natural, like things happen with the earth. It naturally over centuries, over thousands of years, it cools, it heats up. And that's accurate. But what we're noticing is over the last few decades, the activity that us humans are doing, everything that we are doing seems to be releasing these greenhouse gas emissions more frequently. And what these greenhouse gases are doing is they are naturally just building this barrier in our atmosphere and warming up our planet. And it has been proven scientifically that that's happening due to the activity of us operating as a world, as humans. And so everything that we're doing is contributing to the warming of our atmosphere and thus contributing to these climate events getting stronger, these disasters being again more frequent, and just being more costly to us as a species. And so while every single thing that we're doing, right, is continuing to add to this, bringing it back home, I guess, is that everybody, all the organizations, all the activities that are happening, everything is contributing to these greenhouse gas emissions. Some of these activities are a lot more impactful than others. But us as healthcare organizations, just like Tim said, because we're operating 24 hours a day, right? We're using a lot of energy, we're consuming a lot of products in order to operate, in order to deliver care to our patients. Healthcare organizations are some of the larger contributors. And so about 5% of all global emissions are due to healthcare facilities around the world, right? Not just United States, but around the world. And 10% of that 5% are just specific to United States. So very intensive, very greenhouse gas intense. And these greenhouse gases, just to give you a little bit of a nerd out there are various types. Carbon dioxide obviously being kind of the primary one. This one is used in fossil fuel, burning of fossil fuel, so for our electricity. Methane is another one. It's actually a lot more intense than carbon dioxide. A lot of times methane, you can think of cow farts. That would be the one. So livestock digestions, but also landfills. So when we talk about waste that all of us as humans are generating, but also healthcare waste, that is goes into landfills and that produces methane. Nitrous oxide, that's fertilizers, fossil fuel combustion. Nitrous oxide has a ton of effect, and nitrous oxide is used in anesthesia. And so a lot of that work, when we go into some of the work that we're doing as an organization, we address nitrous oxide utilization in our anesthesia use. And then fluorinated gases, so refrigeration, air conditioning, some of the manufacturing. And we'll talk about that specifically to what you guys can do. But just a little tidbit, like if you go to a grocery store and you see a refrigerator open, just close it, right? Because there's a ton of fluorinated gases that are used in order to keep that refrigeration going. And so if you can contain that and use a little bit less just by closing that door, that's ends up adding up, right, over time. So just little tidbits of what you as a human being can do to reduce your emissions. All right, so let's dive in. In healthcare, greenhouse gas emissions and overall the climate-related disasters and the warming of our atmosphere and the air pollution and the severe weather and the extreme heat. So how does that impact us, right, as an organization? So what we see and what our doctors see are more asthma and cardiovascular disease in areas that have malaria, dengue fever, West Nile virus, Lyme disease. That gets intensified due to the more extreme weather pattern and more moisture in the atmosphere. Again, allergies, respiratory diseases, that gets exacerbated due to various air pollutants. You have malnutrition, diarrhea in areas with a lot of moisture. Then, of course, the extreme heat that we are experiencing and people, their cardiovascular diseases being exacerbated and people just having heat stroke during summer. And of course, when there's severe weather, we are seeing a lot of injuries and fatalities due to that. So we are, we are seeing all of those come into our hospitals, our acute care centers. We're seeing a lot more issues that our population that we are serving is experiencing. So those are the things that we are treating a lot more of, and definitely can show the US Center for Diseases can show a trending of those issues going up. And of course, Novant Health, we can see all of that as well as some of the trending issues of our population. So climate action. So climate action is what are we doing in order to help alleviate or help reduce the effects of climate change, i.e., what are we doing? What are the strategic efforts aimed at reducing the overall greenhouse gases? Climate change is what is happening over time, and we are trying to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that are being released into the atmosphere. So those are the planned responses, and those are the things that we're going to go into that we're talking about today, and what the world overall is doing, the action it's taking to reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that are being released into the atmosphere. Paris Accord, you all may have heard of that. Paris Accord was signed by nearly 200 countries, and the entire point of the Paris Accord, it's an international treaty that all of the countries except for 4 have signed on to limit the effects of global warming or climate change to no more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, and to reduce or become carbon neutral by 2050. So the only 4 countries, I've checked this morning, the only 4 countries that have not signed on to the Paris Accord, it's also known as a Paris Climate Agreement. Those countries are Iran, Libya, Yemen, and United States has pulled out of this yet again. So those are the only 4 countries that are right now not doing or not collectively working towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And what you will see is that in United States, organizations themselves are taking the efforts into their own hands, like Novant Health, in order to reduce those greenhouse gas emissions. So some countries have either not signed on or have pulled out, but overall, the world is trying to do our best in order to reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that are being released into the atmosphere. So decarbonization. So what are we doing? Some of these terms hopefully will help you get your footing around some of these efforts that are happening. So decarbonization is the process of reducing greenhouse gas emissions to control global warming and achieve climate goals. So when we talk about reducing greenhouse gas emissions, we're talking about removing carbon from our operations to be either carbon zero, carbon neutral, carbon negative, or net zero. Electrification. Electrification of end-use technology combined with decarbonization of electricity generation reduces combustion-related greenhouse gas emissions. So those 2 are part of your dictionary that you should be able to recognize. ESG references environmental, social, and governance. So ESG is an acronym that you may hear a lot. Environmental, meaning advocating for environmental stewardship and climate change strategies. Social, meaning enhancing the quality of life, enhancing the quality of life, improving a population's well-being, and promoting positive health outcomes in the community. And then governance means implementing strategies and systems that determine how an organization regulates itself. ESG is a goal for a lot of organizations and also for a lot of governments to implement ESG strategy means to address both environmental, social, and governance of a particular organization. And then other terms are carbon zero, means that your emissions are not being produced at all, no carbon emissions. Carbon neutrals means that some emissions are generated, but they're somehow offset somewhere else to make overall emissions zero. And carbon negative refers to removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. A company is carbon negative when it removes more carbon than it produces. Just a little tad bit, one of the ways to be carbon negative is to, of course, reuse a lot, or from planting trees. That's another way. And then net zero is a balance between all emissions produced and the emissions removed from the atmosphere. For example, building generators, a building that generates as much energy as it uses. So that's being net zero. Any questions? I'll pause there about any of these. These get a little bit more complex. And I see Sean is talking, but I don't know if he's talking to us or in another meeting. He's probably in another meeting. Okay. All right, so let's go into greenhouse protocol. Scope 1, greenhouse protocol defines different types of emissions. There are 3 types of emissions: scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. Scope 1 are direct emissions. Those emissions refer to direct emissions produced by consuming products on site by owned facility. So those are emissions that the company facilitates or from company vehicles. So those are owned by the facility, and scope 1 emissions are directly something that a facility can reduce. Scope 2 emissions refer to indirect emissions from what is purchased by a facility. Those also occur on site and usually are the electricity that we are using, or the energy that's used. So while we don't manufacture or we don't create those emissions directly, we do have an impact on how we use that electricity, and thus we have an impact on what kind of emissions are released into the atmosphere or how much of them. So that's really important. Those are the things that you guys can influence directly. Scope 3 emissions refer to the indirect emissions. So they are not produced by equipment owned or controlled by the facility, and not produced by purchased utilities. But those are the things that organizations emit indirectly through their day-to-day operations. So those are the capital goods and the products that we are ordering and consuming. Those are emissions due to employee commuting. They are emissions due to the use of the products and then the end of life of those products. So how do we dispose of those products? Also franchises, leased assets, and investments, interestingly, also what do we invest in as an organizations? So there are 3 different types of emissions. Each one of them, there is a degree of influence that we can have in how and what we are emitting. And so they're all very important, and all 3 of them are described in the greenhouse gas protocols. And how to calculate them is also described in the greenhouse gas protocols. And those are the things that Navine Health is monitoring, is calculating on a frequent basis, and we are reporting out on those as well. So when it comes to the type of emissions and how impactful they are from the standpoint of how large are those emissions for an organization. Usually, scope 1 and scope 2, um, it's fairly easy to calculate the amount of emissions that we have from scope 1 and scope 2. And there are some mitigation opportunities that we have in place around those scope 1 and scope 2 emissions. So how do we reduce our energy consumption? How do we reduce our refrigerant utilization? Same thing is for refrigerants and business travel, anesthesia gas calculation, and staff commute, and fleet. Again, scope 1 and scope 2 may be the larger bubble, right? Because they're the larger emissions. And there are efforts in place to address those. And then you get into things like supply chain. Supply chain is a very, very big emitter. I am part of supply chain at Navine Health. What becomes really tricky or very sticky when we come to supply chain emissions is because Navine Health doesn't actually manufacture anything. So we don't have a whole lot of ownership of how the products that are coming into our facilities, the emissions that are associated with them. But we have a lot of relationships with our vendors, and that's what we're trying to influence. We're trying to influence our utilization of the products that are coming into our facilities and working with our vendors to make sure that those products that are coming into our facilities are becoming more sustainable, less carbon intensive. We're trying to figure out how to reuse them, recycle them, instead of disposing them into a landfill. And if you guys remember, methane is one of the more intensive and intensive gas emissions, more impactful ones, and that comes directly from landfills. So what we're trying to do as a supply chain is to address what we're using, how we're using it, and how are we disposing of it. And so we've actually, as I said, done some calculations, and what you can see here is from the metric tons of CO2 emitted. Scope 3 is this big green bar. Scope 3 is obviously probably about 66 to 70% of all of our carbon emissions. And this is very similar for all healthcare emissions. So we're very much on par with all the other healthcare organizations out there. And then scope 1 and scope 2 emissions, those are the electricity usage, some of the other emissions associated with our direct operations. They are a little bit smaller, but still very impactful in terms of what we can do around them. Then we further break down the scope 3 emissions into the types of products, pharmaceuticals being some of the larger emitting products that we use. And then all others are associated with some of the transportation, some of our commute, and a few when I say transportation, I mean distribution, right? So we do our own distribution of products. Commuting and travel as well is in here. So let's dive into what is Navine Health doing around our emissions, and what are we doing to reduce our emissions long term. So these are the near term 2030 and 2050. We've originally based our emission reduction targets on science-based targets. Science-based targets are something that has been developed, and a lot of the organization worldwide are subscribing to science-based targets, are really driving organizations to reduce their emissions to net zero, right? So whatever we consume is also something that we address to absolute reduction of emissions. In 2030, originally when we set these targets in 2022, our goal by 2030 was to reduce our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions by 35%, and long term to reduce that by 90%. We have since changed that just because we are very heavily reliant on Duke Power, and Tim will go in a little bit more into our Duke Power partnership there. But Scope 1 and Scope 2 were at 35 and 90% reduction. Scope 3 was at 67%, and 90% supplier engagement. Waste was diverting 67% of our waste from the landfills and diverting 90% of waste from landfill by 2050. And water was 10% by 2030 and 25% by 2050. Again, we've changed that a little bit. We revised those goals in 2040. Now the near-term goal by 2030 is for us to reduce our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions by 15%. Again, long term, all is staying the same. We're still trying to get to net zero in our energy utilization. We're trying to get to net zero with our vendor partners in Scope 3 through our supplier engagement. We're trying to be zero waste and divert 90% of all of our waste from landfills, and also water 25% reduction by 2050. So the only significant change in our revision of our goals in 2024 was to reduce our near-term goal from 35 to 15%. And we're trying to do all of that through energy efficiency, renewable energy implementation, supplier engagement to address our Scope 3 Scope 3 emissions. Waste is through reducing recycling and composting, and we'll go into that a little bit more. And then, of course, water reduction, which is probably going to be one of our more ambitious goals, because in healthcare we are extremely water intensive as in operations. So 2025 implementation plan, just so you guys know, Navant Health has again set these goals as an organization, but it is also doing a lot to invest into this. So we are investing into EV charges. We are doing a lot, and Tim will go into that as well. A lot around heat recovery, removing pneumatic controls. We're doing a lot around waste hauler reduction. We are looking and partnering into tracking our reuse, reducing our water. Again, a lot of cost is going into helping us operationalize a lot of these efforts. So I'll pause here and see, Tim, if you want to add anything.
I think a lot of our initiatives in 2025 are going to be directed from the Energy as a Service project that we're doing with Bernhard. So you'll see that really kick in. The signing, I think, on that, the commercial signing on that is tomorrow on that project. So it's going to start moving really quickly. Probably the last week of this month, early May. I think some of you've already gotten some invites or some emails from Chip about some phase 2 meetings that are going to be taking place with the Bernhardt team to go back through your buildings another time. So just be on the lookout for that. And then the next slide.
Oops, sorry.
is,
Do you want me to drive or do you want to drive?
I don't, you're welcome to.
Okay.
So Duke Energy's sustainability goals. So as y'all are aware, at least in the North Carolina market, Duke is pretty much our provider of electricity. So our scope 2 is really dependent on what Duke Energy does, and Duke is committed to having a reduction of their CO2 emissions to 50% by 2030, and then their net zero, which is basically 95% of their scope 2 and scope 3s by 2050, if I remember correctly. They're also working on an initiative with their Piedmont gas side, the natural gas distribution business, to be net zero on methane emissions by 2030. We are currently buying what they consider to be, what is it? I forget the exact term, but basically sustainable natural gas. And basically it's a great racket for the natural gas distributors because they're monitoring their leaks throughout their system and reducing their leaks and then charging us extra money for the gas that we're buying from them. So not only are they increasing their supply of gas by reducing their leaks, but then they're charging us 10 to 15% more to buy the gas from them. So great racket, but it's a game we play. Next slide. Duke Energy's goals, they're going to transition to cleaner energy sources. They want to double their renewable energy portfolio, modernize the electric grid, which is something that's sorely needed. I think our electric grid hasn't really had any modernizations done to it since the 50s or something like that. So I read not long ago. And then, of course, they support policies that advance technology and innovation, which who wouldn't? Next. Duke Energy's emphasizing collaboration with the regulators. Some of the recent legislation developments, we've introduced a bill in the General Assembly that proposes eliminating Duke's 2030 reduction target, which is going to be interesting to see. The problem with Duke's carbon reduction target, it was highly dependent on eliminating coal-fired plants or either eliminating them or converting them to natural gas. Well, the environmentalists have shut down the natural gas pipelines being built. So Duke's not able to shut down their coal-fired plants and rehab them over to natural gas because there's not enough natural gas flowing in North Carolina to be able to meet the demand, as you all recognize in the winter when we have to do curtailments at certain facilities because we've exceeded or we would exceed our allotment that we've bought. Because the pipelines aren't big enough to be able to get enough gas up here to meet the demand in the winter by the residential customers for heating. So it's kind of a two-edged sword for the environmentalists, which is worse, a pipeline coming across the ground or emissions into the air. And So far, the pipeline across the ground has outdone the emissions in the air, it seems. Next. Most common methodologies for reduction are operational changes, electrification of buildings. Again, that's a two-edged sword there. Can you get enough electricity to the building to electrify certain things? The example here is LED lighting, which definitely reduces our load. We're probably pretty close, again, to the project that we're doing with Bernhardt is going to eliminate the rest of the fluorescent lighting throughout our facilities that we haven't eliminated to date. And then, of course, use of renewable energy. I question some of that as being cheaper or less of an impact on the environment. Wind and solar especially being questionable to me, but that's my personal opinion. And then transportation measures. Public transportation is, pushing public transportation and moving more mass of people using less energy is a far greater thing than all of us driving our individual vehicles into work every morning. Design and construction. So improving building insulation, ventilation, tightening up your building so you have less energy, less heat and cooling going out, and less outside air coming in, and controlling what's coming in. Energy Star certified fixtures, renewable building materials, making sure your doors and windows are sealing properly, automatic doors to manage airflow, which we do that today, planting trees, and looking at your landscaping and making sure that your landscaping has minimal watering needs, that you're doing more native planting rather than the exotic stuff that requires a lot of watering. That's a great way to reduce your carbon footprint. And that's kind of part of this next slide, improving or installing low flow fixtures, replace flush valves on toilets. So some of this is really good. We've run into some issues with low flow fixtures in some of the older buildings. They weren't really designed to be able to handle those low flow fixtures, and I think we found that we end up with some backups on those systems because there's not enough water to move the waste down through the system. But you got to weigh the needs and the good with the bad. So onwards, reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So alternative fuels for our vehicles, promoting public transportation, ride sharing, partnering with local waste facilities, and then implementing eco driving for the ambulances. I think that we looked at some of those electric ambulances within the system. I don't know where we are with that to date, but that is an opportunity we can look at. Oh, I got equity and inclusion.
I got you.
Thanks. I was gonna stumble on that one.
So diversity, equity, and inclusion, all that means is that, and Navine Health does a really good job, is increasing access to healthcare services for everybody, regardless of their gender, their race, their age, their sex, which is gender. And so encouraging those practices within the organization, and I don't know how many of you guys know, but of course um, we have our efforts throughout the organization um, in order to encourage some of those conversations. And the BRGs, the business resource groups that Navan Health stood up probably about um, 5 or 6 years ago, allow for representation for our own team members to participate and to have their voice heard, um, which is a DEI initiative that Navan Health has begun and continues to advance within our organization. And then, of course, establish and participate in community outreach initiatives. Our foundation does a lot of that. We've partnered with Michael Jordan around that. And Navan Health also has a a supply chain initiative in order to recognize and partner with diverse suppliers. And again, they're not just racially diverse. They're also women's-owned businesses. We recognize veterans-owned businesses. We recognize small businesses, local businesses. So all of that is to ensure that we represent everyone's interests and continue to deliver uh, remarkable healthcare that everyone is used to within our population that we serve. So it's very important, and Navan Health continues to invest in that. And health and well-being is also really important. If you guys haven't seen or heard, there's a lot that Navan Health is doing in order to ensure that our own team members are healthy. I've just heard yesterday that we are releasing, you guys should be seeing, and your team members should be seeing a letter in the mailbox very soon around all the things and all the tools that are available to us to ensure that we continue to prioritize health and well-being for ourselves, our families, and our communities. So be on the lookout for that. There's a new webpage that has been developed and is being released to our team members that will allow to prioritize health and well-being. All right, Tim, I'll give it back to you.
Thanks. Thanks for covering that. Economic impact. We established purchasing criteria. We do look at life cycle cost impacts. I know Dasha has that in her efforts that on the purchasing side that she does, and we look at life cycle cost impacts on our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing type equipment. You got to weigh sometimes getting a couple of kilowatts per hour of tonnage on a chiller doesn't outweigh the initial cost of it over the lifespan of the chiller. So we look at that to see that and make sure that it's a wise investment. We do provide opportunities for business partners in the local community. We try to use local tradespeople when we build things. And I know Dasha and her team are constantly looking for local businesses to provide our supplies and systems that we use, leveraging rebates, grants, and other funding sources. So we've done some rebates with Duke Energy on some projects that have been cost reduction initiatives, and then implementing cost reduction initiatives. So next, career development. One of the things we do need to look at is partnering, and we have done this in a couple of instances to limited success, but partner with local trades, schools, and colleges to establish a pipeline. I know we have some interns that come into the hospital and work, and then we've done some programs, establish an apprenticeship program that upskills. That's part of what this program is that apprenticeship and training opportunities for hospital staff. And I know Lindsay and Chip have worked really hard on some other programs that we've done with our technicians, training programs that we've done with our technicians to help them develop their careers. And that takes us to the next phase, regulatory requirements. So
Do we want to take a break since we were about an hour and maybe like a 10-minute break and come back and finish?
up to y'all. Y'all want to move on or take a break?
Just take a quick 5 minute.
Okay. All right, at the top of the hour then.
Sounds good.
Asha, you're sharing your chat screen.
That's because I'm still sick. And yep, thanks, Tim. Tim, I think this is still you if you want to talk through it.
Are we ready to start back?
901.
Y'all are cracking the whip this morning. All right, healthcare sustainability certification. So Joint Commission has started up a sustainable healthcare certification. We are looking at, or we actually have applied for that. We have our inspection on it coming up in September, I believe it is. It is all done electronically with interviews. So we will have all 19 of our hospitals, if I remember right, involved in this, the 16 in North Carolina and the 3 in South Carolina. Of that, they will take, I think it's 20% or like 5 of the hospitals, if I'm remembering right, that they will interview virtually, and we'll be looking at electricity, basically natural gas usage or diesel usage or fossil fuel usage, and then waste are the 3 items that they'll be reviewing or will be reviewing with them. It is a 2-year renewal process. So this first year, we basically will be telling them how we're going to reach our goal. And then the next renewal in 2 years, we'll have to explain where we are in reaching our goal and how we're going to continue moving forward to that goal. And you guys will, I know that has been put as a goal for the year by to attain that certification by Chip and all the directors. So it will definitely start getting pushed to y'all to be prepared for that. We don't know who those 5 hospitals are, so every one will need to be up to speed on the requirements and what we're doing. Next slide. This is the proposed CMS Scope 1 performance metrics. Energy use, y'all are familiar with kilobtu's per square foot. That is a measurement that we use pretty regularly. We do Energy Star, but it is all reported by THG for us. And then mobile combustion, all of that stuff is picked up through our work with 10X in our sustainability efforts. There's some more of the proposed CMS Scope 2 performance metrics. These are all, next slide, yeah. These are all purchase. So Scope 2 is what we buy. Scope 1 is what we consume ourselves, and Scope 2 is what we buy from others. So this is kind of just working through what these performance metrics are. And then Scope 3, which is what Dasha is most focused on, is the purchased goods and services and how our vendors that we buy things for meet the greenhouse or the performance metrics.
Tim, do you mind if I speak to this a little bit?
No, go for it, please.
Okay, Dasha, oh, there you go. So these are actually proposed metrics that went in front of our House of Representatives Ways and Means Committee in 2022. So it's a little dated. That it was a couple of years ago under a different administration. They had representatives there who gave witness testimony from Gunderson Health, Providence Health, and there maybe were like one or two others. But Gunderson and Providence have been really instrumental in shaping what the landscape of sustainability could look like in healthcare, especially in like red states and blue states, right? They basically took politics out of it, became like a bipartisan issue, took it in front of the House Ways and Means Committee, and they proposed, this is what's really important here. We've talked a lot about in this leadership program, conditions of participation. So those are like the A tags and the K tags, and that's how like Joint Commission and DNV create their standards, like your physical environment standards or environment of care standards. So what's happened is that through that testimony in front of our House of Representatives, they're asking the Centers of Medicaid and Medicare Services to consider, these are not like have been like approved or adopted in legislation, but to consider that at some point moving forward, Joint Commission, DNV, CMS take these performance metrics and the same way they might evaluate, are you following your life safety plan? Are you creating a safe environment for your employees? Do you have a utility management and loss of utility plan? They're actually going to be looking at your sustainability performance, and these were their proposed metrics in which they would evaluate whether or not you're complying with federal regulations for sustainability. So these are just what you might be thinking about, in your longer term projects like the Bernhard partnership of how you might be able to achieve these metrics should they be adopted and enforced as legislation. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks for that, Lindsay. So we skip down to energy management, Dasha 44. So sustainability in healthcare, hospitals use 2.5 times more energy per square foot than an office building. We spend more than $6.5 billion a year on energy annually. If we can reduce our operating expenses and our utility costs, that puts more resources back into patient care. As y'all know, I think it's, and Lindsay, you probably are a little more correct or have better information on this, but I think it takes something like somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 worth of revenue for every dollar spent out the back door, back of the house.
Those were the good old days. That was when you had a 5% operating margin. As of 2023, in their annual report, Novant Health reported a 1.77% operating margin. So it's actually $1.77 instead of, that. So it's like almost 5 times as much as what it used to be.
Yeah. So the more we save in back of the house, the much better off we look at the front, but bottom line. Next. energy use intensity, the total annual energy consumption per square foot measured in kilobtus per square foot. So you all get that report. It comes out. Unfortunately, it's usually a month behind before we see it. Hopefully with the Barnhart program and the amount of monitoring and that they're going to be doing, the additional all the additional equipment that they're going to be adding into our buildings. I've seen some reports that they have that they put out, and they are basically on the hour looking at our energy use intensity. So it's going to be a big change for us in how we can respond to problems that we see throughout the building. Site energy use intensity is the consumption shown on the utility bills. Source energy energy use intensity is the total amount of raw energy required, including transportation and site generation. Next. So source energy, again, that's like scope 2 type energy. It's what's created or what we're buying, and then site energy is what we're using at our site from our own uses. Next slide. So median, this is just a graph showing you the median source and site energy use intensity by building types, and you can see hospitals are ranked in there at about the 4th level of energy, with the source and the site EUI broken out. I wish we had a site EUI at that level. Our site EUIs are more up in the 200 to 400 range, with I think Medical Park was at 407 kilobtus per square foot this last month, which is hard to believe. Next slide. 2024 total million BTUs per square foot. So you can see the different sites, and you can see where we stand. Next. Total. Okay. There's the total, the 2024 kilowatt hours per square foot for each of our buildings. You can see that there's some that are pretty high, being Charlotte Orthopedic and Matthews. And you have to remember, part of the reason that those two hospitals are so high is that they're very high surgical. They're almost an ASC. They do a lot of surgeries. Majority of they have very few overnight stays. I think Medical Park has only like 9 or 10 beds that they keep for overnight stays. I don't know if anybody's here from Medical Park, but that's one of the reasons that they're so high energy use level. Next slide.
Yeah, why is Matthew so high? Is that just all the construction, or?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna blame it on, Steve, is the construction, and hope that 2025 shows a big improvement for Matthews. But yeah. And this is our water usage, if I remember right, gallons per square foot. So of course, New Hanover, we didn't get water reporting for New Hanover, for the New Hanover properties, so we couldn't include that on this graph. But And then Energy Star National Median Table, so you can see that is source EUI on national median for hospitals. It is general med surge is 426, and site EUI, the median is 234 based on industry surveys. It's what the gist of that slide is showing us. We do have an energy use profile on the EPA website, but it gives you a holistic view of your building's energy. You can create a more accurate baseline for energy use to measure project success using various dashboards to observe trends and create energy use profiles. And then next is to create an energy use profile, 12 months of consecutive data, compile the utility bills and harvest the data from Energy Star. So we use THG that you could get your utility bills from, aggregate the consumption data into kilobTUs to calculate your total energy consumption. And so THG does this for us, but this is just kind of letting you know how it's compiled. And then next slide. Energy consumption. So total energy is kilobTUs. So that's 1,000 BTUs, and a BTU is calculated as the amount of energy necessary to increase the temperature of a pound of water by 1 degree Fahrenheit. And these are just, I'm not going to go through and read all these. Y'all I would hope would know that, being in the business you're in. But this is just kind of ways to change from one type of measurement to another. So like the kilowatt hour is a kilowatt is 3,412 BTUs. Energy cost varies depending on your utility provider. We enjoy a very low energy cost in North Carolina because of Duke Energy's. A lot of their energy is hydroelectric, and then we've got several nuclear plants around that help keep our energy costs really low in North Carolina. So it makes it very difficult to do energy projects because the return on investment extends out so long. If you were up in the Northeast where they're paying 2 to 3 times the kilowatt hour rate that we're paying, energy projects become very easy to justify. So next, energy cost index, divide your total annual cost by your total gross floor area to get your energy cost index, and then you can use that to compare all your utilities. Next. And then you upload that we upload all of our energy bills or our bills to the THG dashboard. And if y'all don't have access to that, let me know. I can get you access to it, and you can look at not only the Novant system as a whole, but down to your individual hospitals and what your energy use is for any given month. And some of this data at some of our sites goes back 10 years or more to be able to view that energy use over time. So create an energy management plan. Once you've identified through your energy use profile and dashboards You can start prioritizing your efforts. Where's your opportunity? What's going to give you the greatest value? And what can you achieve with the available resources? So that's a way that you can set realistic goals towards reducing your energy greenhouse gas emissions and improving your energy efficiency. Energy conservation measures are solutions that reduce energy consumption. Boy, that makes sense. ECMs focus on demand side and include projects like energy efficient equipment, automation and controls, retrofits, retro commissioning, which is where we bring in a vendor to go through our systems and get them back to operating the way they were originally designed to operate. And then by use of solar power, geothermal, or other renewable energy sources to reduce your footprint. So energy cost reduction measures are solutions that reduce energy costs. Energy cost reduction measures focus on the supply side of conservation, including operational interruptible service programs. That would be where you would possibly do some reduction of utilities or use around the building. We would struggle with that in a hospital environment. There is some in some locations, and with some generators, we could go to dropping off the utility grid and generating our own power to help reduce our electric bill, but you got to weigh that with the cost of the fuel that you're burning to do that. Demand response, rate negotiations with the utility companies, and then using some tax exemption advantages and credit programs, which are difficult for us since we're an exempt organization. Next. Prioritizing measures for implementation. So bottom line impact, assess how current or future projects affect the bottom line. Are there costs that can be avoided? What are the estimated cost savings? How much will the project help your facility achieve energy performance goals? And does the project have other benefits like infection prevention, reducing labor costs, improving customer comfort or satisfaction? All those are considerations to take when you're putting together a ECM or an ECRM that is competing for your dollars. Next, then you would develop a project business case to justify using that. Building infrastructure investments are often evaluated using facility condition index and the average age of the plant. Next, the building infrastructure evaluation. So facility condition index is the building's total maintenance and repair cost divided by its current replacement value. So we use a company to help us with that, and we have a software that we work with called Origin. I don't think I know I use it a fair amount. I don't know what y'all's amount of use is in it, but we had a company called Synergy come out and do a facility condition assessment of all of our buildings and all our building equipment. And through that, they've got all of our assets listed, and we have a facility condition index that they have worked up for us. But this is how they get to that. And healthcare, the facility condition index on average is somewhere around 23%. We are much better than that. On average, our buildings are somewhere in the 50% range on the facility condition index. So we've done a really good job of maintaining our buildings, which is a credit to y'all's work throughout Novant. And next slide, evaluating project funding mechanisms. So there's self-funded projects, which are either operating OpEx or CapEx. And it really depends on what the project is, whether it's considered operating expense or capital expense. And I have arguments with finance regularly over that because they feel more and more it seems that it should be operating rather than capital expense. Capital expense has to increase the useful life of a piece of equipment or a total replacement of that piece of equipment for it to be considered capital. So painting a wall is not considered capital because it doesn't increase the useful life of it nor improve the or change the asset. The asset's the wall, not the paint on the wall, they say. Same with carpeting. But then if you look over in which is really strange, you look over in our medical group, painting walls and replacing carpet is considered a capital expense. So it's funny money when you start talking to the finance people. They do math differently than the rest of the world, I think. So possible no or low cost funding, utility rebates from utility providers, equipment rebates from the manufacturers, and then federal and state grant programs. So we have done some utility rebates with Duke Energy. So Duke Energy, when a building is brand new, it is already in Duke's, I forget what the name of that actual program is that they call it. But until you have used, I think it's somewhere around 1 million kilowatt hours of electricity, you are in that program, and then you can opt out of it. If you're in that program, in their rebate program, basically you can apply for rebates when you make upgrades and changes to your building. So like at Mint Hill and at Charlotte Orthopedic and the Child Development Center, we have some programs going on with a company called Patheon that is making some changes to our air handling units, and that was considered a rebatable program. So we opted back in to the program for those facilities and got the rebate, and now we're in the measurement and verification mode on those projects. And then once we've been through that for a year, we can opt back out and save. It's a pretty significant savings to not be in that program in the tens of thousands of dollars annually. The next slide. Evaluating project funding mechanisms, so financing. These are different ways that you can finance programs. Novant chooses to self-finance all of our programs, which is one of the reasons that we kind of are a little slow in making changes, although this energy as a service is similar to a performance contract. They're guaranteeing us a savings percentage. And if they don't meet that, then they will be writing us a check for the difference between what we saved and what they guaranteed. Haven't ever done it before at Novant, so it's going to be an interesting change in the way that we do things. Next slide. There is $369 billion worth of funding available for energy efficiency and clean energy projects in the Inflation Reduction Act. I think that's a misnomer, but that's what they called it. Next. Energy efficient commercial buildings, the current law tax deduction for energy savings on commercial building properties is available to tax exempt organizations. Has never been in the past, so that includes hospitals. The deductions allocated to the designer of the building or the retrofit plan and is available for properties installed as part of the interior lighting system, the heating, cooling, ventilation system, and or the building envelope. So what that means is that although we can't get the tax deduction, we can allow the designer of that project to get that tax deduction and therefore reduce the cost back to us if they're willing to take that risk. And I have yet to find a designer in our market that's willing to take that risk, to be quite honest. But it is available out there. There is a new tax credit available for certain commercial vehicles and mobile machinery. It's out there. And then alternative fuel refueling property, the law extends through 2023, the tax credit for the cost of qualified internal alternative. Starting in 2023, charging and refueling property would be eligible if it's placed in service in low income or rural. Anyhow. Tax credit for renewable energy projects. There's a clean energy investment credit out there available too. And then always the disclaimer to consult with your accountants and tax professionals. Don't listen to Tim. Next, establishing a measurement and verification protocol for the project. So international performance measurement and verification protocols, the most common method for establishing energy usage baselines and measuring project savings and successes. An M&V plan is established to document, monitor, and defend your success of your project. Next. So there's 4 different options for an international protocol measurement and verification plan. Option A, and you guys can read through those, give you a few minutes. I don't need to read the slide for you, but those are just different ways to verify that you are actually getting the savings that you identified when you put the project together. And move on. Establish an M&V protocol for the project. So repurpose the energy use profile to create a baseline module that represents the pre-project conditions. A multivariate regression analysis, normalized raw energy cost and consumption data by considering variables such as weather, climate, the square footage that you're using, what construction projects are going on or will be going on, what energy intensive equipment you have in that space, and then the number of full-time equivalent staff operating in there. Next, data regression analysis on the weather considers abnormal weather conditions that can skew energy consumption. And you would use weather variables such as dry bulb, dew point, or heating degree and cooling degree days to normalize the data against this extreme weather. There's change in use or floor area, and then utility rate structure considers current and future rate fluctuations with multiple utility rate options. And then next, we would implement projects and monitor the results. So now you've made the decision that your project is viable. You've got funding for it. So now you're going to implement that project. You're going to put in your monitoring and verification program and train your staff on preventing future savings degradation. And then you're going to brag to the administration and leadership of all the great things that you did for them in hopes that they will fund future projects for you. And then, of course, you always have to educate your staff about new projects. So you got to create training plans and then to teach them how to operate this system that you've installed. And next is, again, communicating. I like that. Communicating results to leadership. Now, you need to brag about the results to leadership, not just communicate. You need to, every time you see them, yeah, we're still saving energy, because that's the only way you're going to get funding for these projects. So next slide, Dasha. 10X. So we use a company called 10X TL to track all of our energy, not just our energy usage, but our greenhouse gas emissions on a monthly basis. So some of you may have received those emails from them asking for certain information. That is important to us to be able to properly identify and report our greenhouse gas emissions. These people are dogged about gathering this information, and when we started getting into it, I was just astonished at the amount of information that we had to collect and the number of vendors that they go out to on a monthly basis. I would hazard to guess that it is upwards in the neighborhood of over 400 in companies that they're sending emails out, and not just one time, but they're sending them out over and over, trying to get this information to be able to report it properly. But they are tracking our electricity, our natural gas, our mobile fuel, our anesthetic gases, refrigerant, water, waste. And then there's subcategories in all of those that they're sending out and gathering information together and compiling it for us on a monthly basis. There is a website, and looks like Dasha was logged into their website and pulled this screenshot off for us of the 2024 usage greenhouse gas impact that Novant's footprint, and we are down even to the medical office buildings in some instances. Some things we haven't been able to gather from them, but others we have. But definitely all the tertiary hospitals, the acute care facilities, and the ASCs, we've been able to gather really good data from. And part of that is help from y'all. And then part of it is just that these people are like bulldogs grabbing a hold of this information and trying to gather it. It would drive me absolutely crazy to have to do this. I just couldn't. Anyhow, next slide. Most challenging part about a sustainability program is sustaining the long-term success. And boy, there's probably no truer statement in this set of slides than that right there. Most energy conservation programs realize savings degradation within the first year. Continuous monitoring, training, and proactive management are keys to sustained results. So I see that we will go in and commission a building, and within a year go back and look at it, and it is not at the same savings level that it was when we finished commissioning it. So it happens over time, and we just need to be aware of that and constantly looking at our buildings and making sure that they're operating optimally. And Dasha, I'm tired of talking. You can take over.
You're so funny. Yes, I can. So, there's a lot that you guys can do in your day-to-day jobs, and there's also other ways for you all to get involved. So I said in the beginning that we do have a sustainability committee. All of the work that 10X does to put those reports for us, we do report out on that information to various sources. Again, we're able to track our emissions on a monthly basis and provide reports to whoever needs to see that information. And there are also other ways to get involved. We do have green teams. We currently have 8 green teams that are at Navant Health, that each one is working on various projects to ensure that we continue to advance the projects that Tim was talking about, as well as other projects depending on the subject. We have an energy team, a sourcing team, a buildings green team, pharmaceuticals, chemicals, transportation, nursing and recycling, food and nutrition. Each one has different projects, again, that each one is focusing on in order to address emissions in various areas that of interest that you see here. There's a way to sign up for each one of these. There is a way to participate, to learn what they're working on. And the way to do that, I think I have a link down at the bottom where you all can go, and it's on our iConnect. And each team is made up of Navant Health team members who do have either direct responsibility and or just have specific interest in our pharmaceutical usage and recycling of our drugs and things like that in in the projects that they're putting on. Usually the meetings are monthly meetings. So let's talk about general waste reduction opportunities. There has been a lot. The recycling green team is doing a lot. They're putting out a new policy. They are talking about, they've contracted with a new vendor that will help them with waste segregation, that will help with messaging around recycling in our facilities. And that will help us to hopefully do a lot more around recycling and reuse. We are also in supply chain and sourcing specifically, are working with suppliers to identify ways that we can reuse and repurpose supplies. Specifically, our EP labs are doing a lot around not just throwing away supplies, but putting them into bins and then sending them to a repurposing facility that uh, that uses various methods and processes in order to make sure that the product is sterilized, and then sells that product back to us at a much more reduced price. And our clinicians just continue to kind of reuse the same device. We're trying to implement a lot of that in the OR as well. We're trying to figure out how to recycle packaging, eliminate certain waste. So we do have a waste tracking dashboard for our ORs, because if you can only imagine, and you probably don't have to imagine if you've ever been in any of our operating rooms, you will see a ton of product either being opened and just thrown out, or not opened and thrown out, or dropped. And until very recently, we didn't know how much of that has been happening, but now we're tracking our OR waste down to procedure level, down to physician level. And some physicians, specifically in the Charlotte orthopedic hospitals, have set metrics for themselves to address the amount of waste that comes out of their procedures. So they're tracking that on a monthly basis. They're being reimbursed on how much waste that they are able to take out from their procedures. And so that's been a really good way for us to take that down from hundreds of thousands of dollars of waste of implants and OR supplies to still there, right? It's not, we're not delusional. It's not like that's gonna go away tremendously, but it has been cut down by 20 and 30%, depending on month. We're also improving the infection waste process. Just so you know, majority of our OR waste and infectious waste gets incinerated, which is a lot more emissions than even a landfill waste. We utilize autoclaving equipment, thermal disinfection, and microwave sanitation. I don't know a whole lot about that, but we do have a team that will focus specifically on our chemical utilization. So we're doing a lot, and in our specifically in our food and nutrition, we are also, if you guys haven't seen yet or haven't heard about it, but we do have composting that we've implemented. So all the food waste gets in majority of our facilities. We have a composting already vendor in place, and they're collecting food waste, which of course there's a ton of methane out of food waste. This is a problem-solving matrix, and you know, each of our green teams, there's a lot of confusion, anxiety, and frustration. You know, there's a lot of, seems like a momentum that goes into a project that essentially fizzles out with time as maybe barriers are identified, and a lot of that is a change management issue. And this is kind of a problem-solving matrix that has been put together for us that we try to implement, but you know, because a lot of our green teams are come from grassroots, right? Not only are there individuals who are directly invested and can affect change, but there are also a lot of individuals who may have nothing to do with sourcing, right? Or may have nothing to do with transportation or energy, but they're just interested to learn more about what Novant Health is doing. And a lot of times for them, it's there's some confusion about what is it that I can do, or they're trying to figure out how do they fit into the action that we're trying to devise, and keeping those people interested and addressing some of their interests is also a big problem, a big incentive for us as part of green teams. But and then, okay, so how do you get involved if you're interested to get involved? We do have a SharePoint site for our green teams that outlines our mission and vision. There is every single one of our green teams outlined, and we've been trying to keep up with the projects that each one of the green teams is working on. We've we've partnered with local universities and had interns that would come in and help us get in touch with leaders of each one of the green teams, make sure that we keep up with the projects, make sure that we keep updating this webpage. You're welcome to go out there to the sustainability SharePoint site if you're interested in participating. I think the Energy Green team may need some additional participants, as well as chemicals green teams, and each one of them, and you're welcome to join any one of them or allow your team members anyone within your departments, spread the message, allow them to take the time of their busy day to participate in these grassroots movements. All right, that's all we had. Any questions, anything that we can answer for you all?
Yes. A question came up about the homework, and if you don't mind, Dasha, going back to that scope 3 graphic. So one of the homework questions, I think it's the last one, it's about Novant Health scope 3 emissions profile and why it matters. And I know that is definitely your world.
Yeah.
So if you can help answer that question, we'd appreciate it.
So in healthcare, scope 3 emissions make up the majority of emissions of our operations. So these are the emissions that are associated with products and services that we are utilizing in order to deliver healthcare to our patients. It's also things that is very difficult for us to impact directly because we don't produce these products, and a lot of times we are not the ones to affect the manufacturing process of these products, but we dispose of them, right? And we can figure out how to use them properly. So that's why scope 3 emissions, why they are the majority of the emissions of healthcare and are very difficult for us to impact. There is a way that we can reduce them. One of the ways that we can reduce our scope 3 emissions is to work directly with our vendors who manufacture these products, who deliver these services, and figure out if they are also doing something around their emissions, i.e., Novant Health has set our goals to reduce our emissions. Have you, vendor that we work with, like Medtronic or Johnson & Johnson, have you set your emissions? Because the vendors' scope 1 and 2 emissions, this is going to confuse you all even more, are our scope 3 emissions, right? So the way that they produce their products is, and the way that we utilize their product is the way that we utilize their products, is the emissions that we are using in our utilization, or we are reporting in our utilization. So what we do is in supply chain is we go to Johnson & Johnson and we tell them and we ask them, what do you do? What are you doing in order to address your emissions? And they say, well, we've actually signed on to science-based targets, and we are working to reduce our emissions by 2050 according to science-based targets and according to the Paris Climate Accord, right? So they've adopted those. They want to reduce the amount of emissions that they put out there in their operations. And we say, well, that's great, because if you, Johnson & Johnson, in your operations reduce your emissions, that means that the product that comes to us is cleaner, right? So in their production, they are using wind and solar instead of coal well, coal primarily, right? And so that we know that their product is coming to us cleaner. They're using better methods. They're using recycled content, and thus the product that's coming to us is partly a recycled content product. And then when we dispose of it, there's less emissions when we dispose of it. Also, what we do is we just try to use less, right? Again, as I said, those waste dashboards, we're trying to really address how much product is utilized, how much product is thrown away, and what kind of, and if it's possible, can we reuse it? And as I said before, we partner with vendors who are able to help us capture some of those products. They're able to repurpose it, or they're able to sterilize it for us and sell it back to us, and we're actually able to reuse again the same catheter or something like that. So that's how we're trying to mitigate or minimize this big giant green emissions bar. Oof, questions.
Thank you, Dasha. There are several free resources out there. So the American Society for Healthcare Engineering, they've published a sustainability guide in 2020, which became available as a free download for members in 2021. The Sustainability Committee in ASHE continues to develop resources. So there's something called like a toolkit where you can download no cost or low cost, what they're calling energy conservation measures. And so these might be things like reducing ventilation where you can, because we know that fan energy and reheat is a big energy consumer in healthcare. So it gives like a walkthrough of those day-to-day things that like plant engineering and maintenance can control, where I know supply chain, you're a little bit more further removed, but it's still important and you still definitely have a role in that scope 3 reduction. But if you're interested in more of that like tactical, practical energy related, plant related energy conservation measures, I can point you to a couple of free resources just for your own knowledge or for your team. But if there are no other questions, that is the end of today's lecture. Hopefully you were able to get most, if not all of your homework assignment done. But if you have any follow-up questions about the homework, I encourage you to reach out to Dasha and Tim. Thank you so much to both of you for making time for this.
Thank you all.
Thank y'all.
Next class is May 6th in person. So just let me know if there's anything I can do to help between now and then. Okay. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye.